G'day, g'day.
G'day,
Nathan
g'day.
and Brett here from SEQH, talking all things rolling forward. So today we're going to delve into the topic of natural disasters, and let's just dive straight in. What do we do? And we had a really recent scenario: tropical cyclone Alfred. Jumping in, showing presence north, and then heading south, and then
hanging around
and heading inland. So before we jump into Mr. Alfred, talking back the timeline, Brett, what's another key time in business history when you've seen a natural disaster play a bit of havoc in the business?
There's probably two that spring to mind, Nath. Probably the most significant one that was on the radar was the 2011 floods, where we had a very big rain event, and that water was making its way down the Brisbane River. So, strangely enough, there wasn't much rain on the day that it flooded down this end of town. It was kind of sunny, nice day, get a suntan, but there was water coming. So that involved a lot of rejigging, because we were concerned that we were going to flood as well. There was forecasts of floods up Brisbane Way of 2.5 metres over flood levels, so 2.5 metres through houses and stuff. So we were concerned 2.5 metres down here meant we were going to get some water through our, if that translated, through our sheds. So
I remember the times. I wasn't obviously with the business at that point in time, but I lived down in Hamilton, just near Kings Ford, Smith Drive. And my place actually looked out onto the water, and I just saw the river rising and rising and rising, and I thought, like, I wasn't paying attention to the weather. It was a bit silly. I was younger at that point in time as well, and I had this kayak, and so I took the kayak across the road, walked down the rocks into the river as I normally would do, because I saw a bit of waves happening in the river, and I thought, this is really cool. So I start paddling, and then there's this point down there in the corner where you walk around this observing area, and then all of a sudden I got the full force of the wind. And my Lord, it was absolutely ferocious. So I'm quickly turning around and fearing that as I'm turning, I'm getting pushed around and might get pushed over. So anyway,
how'd you go fighting the tide?
Without much paddling, I got thrown straight into the rocks again, and I quickly climbed my way up with the kayak, and out I went. Turned on the news and saw what was coming. So that was down Kingsmith Drive, Breakfast Creek, let alone what was actually happening here when it gets more ferocious at Emmett area.
That's right. And I mean, that was a time when we were unsure. I mean, the previous big flood was 74. The flood maps were available for 74, and the difference was, though, development. Development had come to Brisbane, so that changed how the water flowed. So that year, I think, we were concerned there was going to flood here in Emmett. There was a bit of local flooding on the street, but water coming up out of the river, I think 300 mil was it. Uptown it was 2.5 metres or something. So we went through the whole process of lifting everything up, pulling everything up on the second floor, emptying everything out, putting loaded containers on empty containers with doors open, so the water could come up and rise through the empty containers and not hit the full ones. Unpacking whatever freight we could out of our sheds into containers, again putting them up, which is a whole bunch of work. We spent basically, I think it was like 3 or 4 days, 4 days. Preparation, unloading, picking up, making safe.
I think I recall you saying previously that you moved the trucks up to the top of
we took all the trucks off here, because again, if we got water through them, we didn't want to lose trucks or trailers, so we took them up to Tefco trailers. So the guys at Tefco, let's park this. We filled their yard with trailers and trucks, and the Toowoomba ones obviously stayed in Toowoomba. We sent some up there, but everything was out of the yard because we were concerned it was going to flood. But what it did do was gave me a good understanding of how the Brisbane River floods. So that's why this time around when we had a cyclone, people were concerned about about water rise and about flood inundation. I said, not going to happen. Don't worry about it. It's not an issue here.
We'll worry about other things.
Yeah, exactly. Worry about other things. That's exactly right. So I've got a much better handle on the water flows now and what's required for actually us to flood here. It is possible, but it would take very, very, very specific conditions to do that. So that's why, even though people forecast it, I got a pretty fair idea what it's going to take to flood us here. So most times we won't be worrying about floods.
Yep.
So yeah, it was an interesting time. The other time I want to mention, just touch on briefly, Nath, we had no warning of, was the time we got a twister through our yard.
Yep.
Which you recall when out of the blue, just out of a summer storm, about 25 to 30% of our yard got affected by a twister.
Yep.
Just that 25 to 30% that went through and it started throwing containers, loaded and full, around the place on trucks.
Yep.
That was a really dangerous time. So that got us a lot more focused on wind speed and likely occurrence of those things to basically stop operations in the yard, because at that stage we didn't know what was going on. Effectively, a whiteout just happened and then bang.
Yeah, it was. We
crazy.
Had sideways rain, some hail, and I just remember looking back on the cameras inside the yard, and obviously we got the silo that sits a good 18 metres up in the air.
Yeah.
So looking on that camera, all of a sudden you just see the screen go white.
White. That's right.
Absolutely white.
In fact, there was only one camera of all the cameras, the 40 cameras we got. You actually see a box.
Yep.
Just.
Down our logging operation. If you imagine there's two boxes sitting on top of each other.
Yeah. One just.
The one elevated just sort of all of a sudden just
up and goes.
raised, and then boom, it's gone to the side.
Gone.
It's over.
It was
incredible.
It was incredibly dangerous. So that's a short-term weather event that you could happen any summer.
Yep.
And one that was certainly very scary. I know Chalmers back in the day when they were still operating down at Fisherman's Island, they had an event like that where a big one went through their yard and just threw boxes everywhere.
Hundreds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hundreds
really
of
dangerous.
Boxes.
But in terms of the ones that stick out, the cyclone and the that flood event in 11.
Yep. And what was good with the team at that point in time was, it didn't take long for people to realise that there was something serious happening, and the management team quickly made sure that their team across our entire facility were accounted for, brought them in-house.
Yes.
And then we then had a clear communication plan to actually assess the yard, bring some external crane providers in to help recover those boxes that got thrown around.
Yes.
And then get back to business and communicate with our clients.
That's right. Yeah.
Nice. So let's talk about Mr. Alfred that came about recently, and it was obviously showing warning signs off the coast.
Yes.
And then it started with vessels emitting Brisbane.
Yep.
And going elsewhere. Talk us through your thoughts there, Brett.
Well, it's obviously a big business interruption, Nath. So we've got a period where we have once effectively close the port and vessels don't call anymore, then the work dries up for us.
Yep.
Because the stevedores don't want export boxes at that point. So while the exports can still come to our yard, beyond our yard they don't move. So we've got to be mindful of overfilling our yard too.
Yep.
But we've got to support our customers. So if they want to pack it, we'll generally speaking receive it. So,
yep.
But at some point, the influence of the cyclone and other matters stop them as well. And also we've got to be mindful of the safety of our people. We've got to stop at some point if the safety of our people is threatened. So,
yep.
I think we pulled up stumps on Thursday.
Yep.
Because it was forecast to come, I think, originally Friday morning.
Yep.
If I recall. So 24-ish hours.
Intensify Thursday afternoon and really come in Friday early hours. And
that's right. That was original forecast. Then it actually blew back a day and 2 days. But what that does to the whole economy effectively is stops receivables. So everything gets pushed back effectively a week, and then you get the crazy period after the event, which we've seen after floods and stuff, where the vessels start and then the stevedores turn them really fast.
Yep.
Which means windows for export receivables get incredibly short. Like you might get 10 hours to run your boxes in.
Yep.
So it gets pretty crazy. So and you've then got to clear imports but just have these incredibly short windows to process exports. So it does become very difficult.
So the biggest concern we were foreseeing at that point in time was containers getting thrown around the yard, and then also losing power to the site.
Yes.
Particularly because we have a decent sized book of export refrigerated containers.
Yes.
So from the container stacking perspective, we were then looking at block stacking containers.
Yes.
And thinking about, if the wind is coming, where's it going to travel?
And what can we protect? Yeah.
And what can we protect?
Yeah.
And then similarly, the other strategy we did was positioning containers in front of our roller doors in our warehouses. They're strong, but strong to a point.
Yep.
And that was the learning lesson we had from that tornado event, twister event.
Fools can move.
Well, fools can move, but also those roller doors. We had a few roller doors get blow in.
Yeah, that's
at
right.
that point in time.
That's right.
So that was that learning we took.
And that's a risk which is one you probably don't think first of driving rain going at basically horizontal.
Yep.
Straight in the door, wet and frayed. So
yep.
You mightn't have a hole in the roof, but if your door blows in,
yep, boom. That's another issue. Yep.
Yeah. So we did. You're right, Nath. We did some good stuff there.
Yep. Yep. And then from the reefer side of things, it was then looking at our options to go. What can we get in the realm of backup generators?
Yes.
To make sure that if we do lose power,
to support, because I reckon that was the biggest risk that event for us was freight damage in shed due to rain egress somehow, whether it's doors blowing in or roofs blowing off. And the second thing was damage to refrigerated freight by virtual loss of power.
Yep.
So yes, we had a good strategy there, but again, the primary thing is we don't want people on site unless the people are safe. Yep. So we had a cut off wind speed. Above that, no one on site.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess the hierarchy for us is safety of people, then safety of property, and also safety of customer freight.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice. And then I want you to talk through what you championed with the leadership team through this event, where it was different to the twister. That was a very surprise event, and really the management came together after
the event. That's right. Dealing with the aftermath. Yeah.
This one there was good preparation from the government.
Yep.
So talk us through what you championed with the team.
Yep.
During and then post.
Yeah. Well, so before it was a matter of getting people's input, but also getting people to do stuff to protect our assets, and then basically we drew a line at I think it was
$60K
Wednesday night.
Yep.
Wednesday night, and after that we didn't attend site. We thought that this thing blow, but yeah, protecting our because we're next to an empty container park, and empties are more likely to fly than fulls.
Yep.
So we were concerned that the empty park was going to visit us.
Yes.
Unfortunately, thankfully it didn't. We're also keen to protect our offices as well. If we did have empties flying from next door, we're also keen to protect our roller doors.
Yep.
Protected them. We're also keen to protect our reefers, so we had generators. And then it was a case of getting out of here.
Yep.
So, and then over that period, the management team touched base 2 or 3 times a day just to talk about strategies. If we did lose power, if we did lose comms at home, what would we do? Because, of course, we had to have a strategy where we could talk to each other, but also a strategy where we couldn't talk to each other. And then a strategy where some of us couldn't travel because we're too far away and the roads would be closed. So we had to have people who were a lot closer.
Yep.
And if we couldn't talk to them, so what were the strategies we were going to employ? So
essentially, how would we leave love letters at the depot?
That's right. Yeah.
When someone who can actually make it to the depot, make the presence known.
Yeah, and in an extreme situation, that's what you got to deal. You got to assume that comms is going to be out and power is going to be out. So what are we going to do? So and we've learned some things. I think Nath, about what we can plan for, what we can do better. And if it's more extreme, the sort of things we're talking about would certainly be very relevant.
Yep.
And the strategy we're putting in place.
Yep. So the last thing I want to talk about and reflect on is we came back on Monday.
Yes.
And we still had a bit of flooding around in certain areas across southeast Queensland.
Yes.
But then the weather event actually intensified further west.
Yes.
And ultimately, along the Warrego Highway, it actually cut off around Laidley area, Glenelg Grove.
Yes.
And, that is a major corridor. Yeah. And I remember saying to my wife when I was watching those water levels rise on the government cameras, I just said, Woolies is low stock right now. It's not changing over the next few days.
Yep.
So long as you cannot make your way to the ag sector, of Darling Downs.
That's right.
That's a problem.
Yep.
And we saw that for one of our customers in particular,
yeah,
being a major abattoir
that
has the guts of 1,000 employees, and then they themselves got cut off as well.
That's right.
That grinds to a halt a supply chain.
That's right.
Not just the container side of things, but everything further back from that.
That's right. And so I guess we're thinking about things, Nathan. You might share some things we're thinking about to get on top of, or try and reduce the impact of that. Because obviously, as we're closer to the coast, so we were concerned about our staff.
Yep.
And then what ultimately happened was that the cyclone took longer, so it looked like a crazy decision to pull up stumps a day early because it effectively delayed it a day. While our customers who were further west could see that and didn't, they weren't impacted. They weren't impacted and they were basically going to wait until such time as the things start to move across the coast.
Yep. Which
is a sensible thing. They're 200 k's inland or whatever, so they've got time to get their people home and get them safe and shut production down. So there's a bunch of strategies we can think about to do better to in that circumstance where they operated a lot longer than we thought they would.
Yep.
Where we can give them, additional storage and stuff to keep going.
Yep.
While we can't access their facility to keep them moving.
Yep. Keep their supply chain running.
It's not a supply chain running, and then with higher reefers, additional, bringing forward if possible, releases and line boxes. So there's some strategies there we can do a better job on for this sort of circumstance where the cyclone hangs around and doesn't come.
Yep.
And they keep operating,
yep.
but we can't get to them.
Yep.
So, and then there's the after event when they're cut off and we can't get to them.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yep. Total chaos.
It is chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. And the challenging thing that we were seeing as well is that our Western operation in Toowoomba was still operating.
That's right.
So it came a time come Monday that we had more than 200 containers sitting in Toowoomba's yard.
That's
those
right. 200. We can't get to them.
Those are the ones that actually need to be in Brisbane.
That's right.
So that was an interesting time.
Yes.
So, it was the lead up of, we then had the clearing occurring. So we had vessels that were starting to then come into port.
That's right.
Eventually the rain settled
Containers
down.
up west, yeah.
And we then had to shift our focus on sending assets on the Western Corridor to support our customers and also retrieve those boxes and make sure that they don't miss their intended vessels when the vessel calls.
That's right. So deal with those really short lead times that aren't normal.
Yep. Wonderful. Well, anyway, I think that's a great little wrap of Alfred and some past events.
Yep.
Any further comments, Brett?
No. I hope they don't turn up again.
Yes.
Cyclones.
Keep them away.
It's been, I think it's 50 years, they were saying, since we had the last one, and hopefully it's 50 years till we see the next one.
Yep, most certainly. All right, perfect.
Thanks, Nate.
See ya.
Cheers.